Take 79, good grief. Recently, the Bible thumping wingnut uploaded a video entitled, "No, Mike, you're not a good guy," which hurt and scarred me deeply. Well, okay, maybe not really. In that video, he made the case that I'm not good, that he's not good. In fact, no one is good, that we've all fallen short of the glory of God. And in the comments section, as a response to someone else, he actually put in some Bible passages to back up his claim that no one is good. And I could be wrong, but I think most of these are actually aimed at unbelievers. But let's have a quick look. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one. Their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of asps is under their lips. I think that's a good one. That's pretty flowery. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. In their paths are ruin and misery, and the way of peace they have not known. So I think the interesting thing to note about Bible verses like that is I think those are testable claims. And I think that the authors of Scripture jumped the shark a little bit here. I think they'd have done well to pull the reins back just a bit and woe that up a little bit. Maybe that kind of language worked at one time, but I don't think it does today. And I think these claims are testable. Now, I want to set aside for just a moment the fact that actually this whole line of reasoning is a diversion from the points that I was making in my original video that Tim's was a response to. I had mentioned in passing that I think Tim and I would get along in any other area, and that I don't think he's a bad guy, and that I don't think he thinks I'm a bad guy. Apparently I stand corrected. Oh, no! But that was not germane to my argument at all, and he actually didn't answer any of the objections that I brought up in the video. But back to this whole notion of goodness, I think it would have been better, or it would be better to say, or it would be believable to say, that God is the most good. That would be believable. It's not particularly testable, but it would be believable if the theology is true and God is the creator, that there would be a pinnacle and he would be it. That makes sense. This would be akin to saying, there's the strongest guy out there somewhere. And I often think of this when some tough guy wants to pick a fight. Dude, one of these days you're going to meet your match. It's logical to assume that there's a guy out there who is the strongest. It's testable, although it would be difficult, but it's reasonable to assume that. When it comes to God, however, to say that God is the most good, but then to say amongst humanity there are none that do good, that there are no good works, this would be akin to saying that there's a strongest guy out there, but that no one else has muscles. And this is testable, and it fails. So, we could all think of any particular unbelievers that we know. I'm not going to make the case for my own goodness here, but I was thinking about a lot of people that I know, and one woman in particular I was thinking of last night that really comes to mind is someone who meets none of those criteria at all. She is the most charitable, cordial, generous, loving, lovable woman. You can imagine, I went to school with her. She's very thankful. I do her car repairs now, and she's very thankful every time I do the simplest service for her. She's dedicated her life to natural childbirths, to helping women have as painless and natural a childbirth as possible for mother and child, to bring the child into warmth and nurturing. She's got 3 children of her own that are just a pleasure to be around. They're very respectful and courteous and generous and loving themselves with a zest for life. She literally has none of these things in her. I mean, if her feet are swift to shed blood, the only blood I could think of might be related to the childbirth. She's not deceptive in any way. And so on those grounds, I think those passages are in a bit of trouble. They're testable and they fail. Back to, I just wanted to finish by addressing some of the things that Tim did not address in his video response, because he focused on this notion that I'm a good guy or not a good guy. But what he failed to address is something that no Christian has ever really addressed in any of the videos where I've asked these questions and posed these problems. And that is, he talked about that, we all need to beg for forgiveness, and that he grants it to some. And of course, obviously, I would ask, why the some? I'm not usually given any kind of an answer. The closest I've ever really received was a Seitan-Bruggencate type of answer for a reason that's sufficient to God. But that's not good enough. It's not good enough when that question is probably one of the most important questions a person could arise or bring up from this theology, given that the vast majority of humanity that have ever lived are apparently fitted for an eternity in torment. That's just not a good enough answer. And it's illogical to suggest that a creator would create someone with a nature and that created being should beg for forgiveness for their nature to the guy who created them. Obviously, I think it's unethical to create someone fitted for destruction. The whole point of my video is that if that were the case, I might be justified in having a little anger about that. Why do I have to be a vessel of wrath, if that's the case, and someone else gets to spend an eternity in heaven, in bliss, when I have no control over that? Does the three-legged table beg the carpenter for forgiveness because it can't stand up? That is ludicrous. No Christian has ever given me a sufficient answer to that question. I suppose the closest I've come is a divine command theory type of an answer, and that's not good enough either. It's not good enough when you're telling me that your God is the most moral, the most good being possible, because these things are not consistent with perfect goodness. If you want to say that your God just plays with us like toys and is not subject to the objective morality that he hands down to us, that those start lower on the hierarchy than himself, then again, you've just described for me a moral monster. But either way, no one has really given me an answer to that question. It's never happened. At the end of the video, Tim brought up my little joke about burning him. He said it was an experiment, that I suggested an experiment. To be clear, it was a thought experiment. I want to make that very clear here. But he did the same thing. He moved the agency from himself. Similar to when Christians remove agency from God, when it comes to us begging for forgiveness, right? He created us with our nature, but the agency is placed on us. The responsibility for that nature is placed on us. Similarly, he moves his agency off-site when talking about being burned, that he hopes that God would grant him some sort of serenity and peace during his persecution, which is interesting because that's not what I was suggesting. He said that I suggested atheists burn him. Not really. I never specified anyone. It could be anybody. The point was that if someone harms you and it brings you physical pain, you might feel a little bit of anger. That was the point that I was trying to make. I don't know if Tim's got a persecution complex, but that's not what I was suggesting. In any case, I promised myself I'd keep this video under 10 minutes. It looks like we're going to squeak in under the wire, so I'm going to go. Thanks as always for watching.